Yo, 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 what up, everybody? Listen up. It's MMA Cannibal here, and this is all the matchups that I'm making after UFC 292. I'm just going through the main card. Let's be honest, nobody cares for the most part about most of those prelim fighters. They're just going to go on to fight other prelim fighters. But I got a few interesting matchups after UFC 292 I want to talk about. I want to talk about a little bit of the future of the bantamweight division and what's going to happen to it. And a couple people I'm just kind of excited to see after their performances over that Saturday. So moving into it, our first matchup, I got Pedro Munoz fighting Adrian Yanez. They're both coming on losses right now. Yanez just had that brutal knockout to Rob Font a few months ago. And Munoz obviously not as dramatic of a loss as Yanez had. But Munoz is kind of older, been around for a while in the bantamweight division. He's like 36, if I recall correctly, probably going to be 37 real soon. And I just don't really think he has much left to give in the division personally, especially after that fight with Cheeto. I'm thinking he's not making a title run anytime soon. So while he's on a loss, we can take advantage of that and give Yanez a bounce back fight. Not implying that Munoz would be an easy fight for him by any means, but I think I like Yanez. He's got a lot of potential in this division for sure, and I'm honestly still so shocked Rob Font was able to starch him like that. But I think he's just going to improve. He needs a little more time, and he's had some time since that knockout loss. He's going to need a little bit more time because Munoz is going to have to recover a little bit as well. And, by the time Munoz is good and ready, I think Yanez will have had a good amount of time to take a break, go back to the drawing board, work on some things since that KO loss to Rob Font, and he's going to come back looking a lot better. Plus, I think this is going to be a great matchup for boxing. I think they're going to both be real high twitch, fast moving, in the pocket, darting in and out kind of exchanges. Good 1-2s from Yanez coming out, while Munoz is going to be kind of darting real quick in and out. I'd be very excited, and I wouldn't be too surprised to see some blood drawn in this fight for sure. Like the way Vera was popping Munoz's nose and drawing out some blood like that. Nothing crazy, but definitely some blood. So I like this fight. Keeps Yanez in the rankings, moves him up a little bit, possibly moves Munoz down, or maybe just keeps both of them right where they are, depending on if Munoz wins. But it's a good test for Yanez too. See if he can at least keep hanging with the top 10 boys. If Rob Font was just like a bad matchup or what. Moving on, I'm matching up Damon Blackshear with Davy Grant. Davy Grant's a pretty good prospect in the bantamweight division right now, and Blackshear arguably won that fight against Mario Bautista. A lot of people were calling robbery. They had the first 2 rounds to Blackshear. I did as well. It looked to me like he had more volume, had more damage, was really just putting a lot of pressure on Bautista really well, doing good work in the clinch. And then just like the last like minute and a half of round 2, he just like the gas tank hit a wall and he just kind of gassed out. In round 3, it really showed itself a lot more. But for a 7-day turnaround like that is pretty good. And I mean, not gassing out until like the last minute of round 2 doesn't necessarily negate all the 4 minutes of work you already did for me. So 2-1. I thought Blackshear won. Bautista got the nod. It happens in this sport all the time. But I'm not looking to punish Blackshear too bad for that. I'm gonna give him another good bantamweight. That's just outside the rankings right here. He wins this fight and one more, and he gets a ranked opponent, I would say. So, and I'm excited for the future of Blackshear and what he could do. He's had kind of a mid start to his UFC career, but I mean, you don't see a twister submission every day. So I wouldn't be surprised to see this guy crack, number 12 or 13 at some point. I don't know if he goes much further than that, but I would like to see him hit those rankings at some point. So I think this is a good fight for that. Following up, Gutierrez versus Bautista. Chris Gutierrez sits right at number 15 on the bantamweight rankings right now and is coming off that loss. I want to say it was to Frankie. No, because Gutierrez got a knockout I can't remember who he lost to recently. It might have been Rob Font too, or Munoz. Oh no, it was Munoz. Yeah, Gutierrez just lost to Pedro Munoz in his last fight, and he's sitting at number 15. Bautista just won this fight, and given that Bautista was going to fight Cody Garbrandt, I would assume if he had won Cody Garbrandt, he'd be getting a ranked opponent next. Obviously, Damon Blackshear is quite a drop in competition from Garbrandt. Well, maybe in 2023, maybe not, but visually on paper, it's a big drop. And since he didn't really convincingly win the fight, I'll still reward him by giving him a ranked opponent that he was probably going to get after our Garbrandt fight, but I won't give him any higher than 15. That being said, Mario Bautista could definitely win this fight. I think both these guys have good paces, good pressure, decent striking, decent grappling. It's just going to be one of those kind of overall like two jack of all trades fighters kind of going at it. But it's bantamweight, so it ought to be exciting. And Gutierrez gets knocked out of the rankings, Bautista gets a spot, or vice versa. Moving on. Neil Magny got absolutely bullied in that Ian Gary fight, and I kind of feel bad for him, especially with how he treated him at the press conference too and everything. Magny didn't deserve that. But, Magny is Magny. He's a pretty mid fighter, and he's going to be hanging around the bottom of that welterweight division a bit longer as far as we can tell. So, I'm putting him against another guy that got bullied in his last fight, and Michael Chiesa. He came back against Kevin Holland in that UFC 291 fight and just kind of got darsed immediately, which is insane. I forget what the number is exactly, but Chiesa is responsible for 5% of all darces in the UFC or something crazy like that. Like the fact that he's one fighter is an entire percentage worths of one type of finish in the UFC is kind of crazy. So I remember these guys fought back in 2020, I'm pretty sure. It was during the COVID times where there was no crowds on Fight Island and stuff. So these guys could run it back. It's been 3-4 years. I think Magny might win this time, honestly, because he's been way more active than Chiesa. And this would be the fight to, honestly, just officially retire one of them. If whoever loses this one, I feel like we should just officially retire. Chiesa's got the analyst desk he can run back to, and Magny, I'm not really sure. I'm sure he's got, kids that he teaches or a gym that he works at, that he can always change, that he can always start doing once this is over. But I think I think it's a good time for the rematch. I don't really like the matchups for the rest of them, the rest of the people in the top 15. I don't really like the matchups for either of these guys. I don't really want to put Chiesa against anyone else unless it's an unranked opponent that we're just going to use to build Chiesa's name to build him. And same thing with Magny. That's the only thing these guys are good for now is just building up younger contenders off of their pre-existing names. So you either put them against each other or you put them against a couple of unranked guys. And I say you put them against each other, get that rematch, get one of them out of here, and then we'll just build their name a little bit more, give them a prospect, get that prospect in there. Because now welterweight's already being a little flooded with prospects right now. I don't think we need necessarily to build a couple more, We got Shavkat, we got Gary, we got Sean Brady's knocking at the door a little bit. We got, there was Hamzat. But, the door's a little open with Edwards at the top too. Because now you got Bilal and Colby. We don't need more title challengers at welterweight at the moment. Let's just get rid of one of these guys, I think. And then, the winner of that fight was Ian Gary, and personally, I think they should just rebook the Jeff Neal fight. I was super excited for that fight. I want to see how Jeff Neal does. I'm more excited to see how Jeff Neal does than Ian Gary does, because obviously we can see that Gary's very good, and based off the fight with Neal and Shavkat, we can say that Neal is very good as well. So I think this would be an actual good, proper striking test for Ian Gary. And I know he called for that Wonderboy fight. Don't get me wrong. Absolutely love that fight. That would be a banger fight. I would not complain. But I think Wonderboy's got his sights set somewhere else right now. It looks like he might be trying to fight Usman and get that number one contender spot, which I do not blame him, honestly. At that point, it's you're one fight away from the title. So I would take it, especially at his age. But Ian Gary versus Wonderboy would be a fantastic fight. I would not shy away from that at all. But I think the Neil fight is way better, way more fun. I think it'd be a much better back and forth, honestly. And there's a real chance that Neil knocks out Ian Gary. Not that Wonderboy can't, but I think Neil would do it a lot more brutally. And no, I'm just gonna put it out there. After that UFC 292 press conference, I would not mind seeing Gary's face flat on the canvas. That's all I'm gonna say. That's all I'm gonna say. Moving on. Amanda Lemos got her shit rocked in that main event the whole time. Just 5 rounds of getting dominated. I mean, that 4th round was a little easier for her, and a judge even gave her the round, which I was like, okay, buddy, sure. Like, the round wasn't as... The only reason you could have given her that round is just the fact that she wasn't getting pummeled on the ground the whole round. And you're like, oh, she's clearly doing a lot better, you know? But when it's one round, when it's like one clear 10-9 that just happens to be in between a bunch of 10-8s, it just makes it look like she's winning that round, even though she's clearly not. But Lemos just got absolutely bitched that whole fight. I mean, you know, there's not much else to say. I knew this was going to be a free title defense for Wei Li, basically. I mean, everyone was talking about how worried they were about Lemos' power, and she hits like a dude. She's a man, duh, obviously. All this stuff, and I'm just like, yeah, but Wei Li is another level. She's just another level. It's not like when Rose was champion or something, and it's like, she's another level, but like she can still get knocked out. Wei Li's just another level. Her grappling is too good. She's too fast. Like, she's a little compact powerhouse. I don't know how she produces the kind of power that she does at strawweight, but good for her. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Wei Li, so I'm so glad to see that fight go the way it did. And Lemos here, I mean, honestly, who cares who she fights next, if we're being totally honest here? I just stuck her against Jandiroba because they're nice and close to each other in the rankings. Lemos is coming off of a loss, but it was to the champion. Jandiroba's on a little bit of a win streak. I believe it's like a 2-3 fight win streak right now. So stick them together. Jandiroba wins that fight. I mean, she may as well be another title contender after the couple of people we have lined up right now. Lemos, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if she beat Jandiroba and just kind of stuck around the top 5 for a little bit, and maybe eventually rematches Wei Li at some point too. These women's divisions get a little shallow, especially towards the top where there's only like 3-4 people that are really worth their salt. So yeah, that's my matchup for Lemos. I don't really care what she does next. I'll be totally honest with y'all. Wei Li, UFC China. This is the move. Yan Xiaonan. This is perfect. My coffee. This is perfect move. I mean, China's not to be rude, but China's the type of country where, like, if at the end of it you don't have a Chinese person winning, things can go south. I mean, we saw what happened with Brazil when Moreno won over Figgy, and they were literally throwing beer on him. It's like, all right, chill out. Or like when UFC went to Mexico City all those years ago, and Yair Rodriguez immediately eye poked Jeremy Stevens like as the fight started, and the fans started throwing, you know, Modelo's at the cage and at the announcers and all that stuff, and they started hiding under the desk for Shield. Like, some places get real bad if you don't have a hometown person winning. So just avoid that. We can have UFC China right here. Wei Li, Yan Xiaonan, co-main event. Petr Yan versus Song Yadong. Personally, I mean, that would be like a big vote for me. You know, Song Yadong has to be the co-main. First of all, I just want to make that clear. Song Yadong has got to be the co-main event. Li Jingliang got to be the featured fight. After that, I really don't care. My opinion, though, this has to be like a fight night. You know, the way they're doing the Mexican Independence Day card with Grasso and Shevchenko, and then they're going to have like a bunch of Mexican theme. They need to do a UFC fight night. China, Wei Li's the main event, defending her title against Yan Xiaonan. I think that's a fantastic idea. I think it would really give Wei Li and that whole Chinese card a really good spotlight. make it a lot more accessible to the people in China. And I think it would just be a really good showcase for that talent from that side of the world. I mean, you could start throwing Tatsuro Taira on there. You know, I know he's not Chinese, he's Japanese, but just start throwing a bunch of Asian talent on that card and just make it a nice little showcase for him. Kind of like what they're doing with the Singapore card. Except I would argue this would be a lot better because they could have Chinese champions in China and freaking a fight night. Holloway's a great main event for a fight night, don't get me wrong, but an actual championship is something different. And I think this is great. I think this is the fight to make right now. The only other contention for Weili right now is Tatiana Suarez, and she's a good pick right now. I mean, I would argue she's equally as good a pick as Yan Xiaonan. You just maybe want to bite on the UFC China thing now while you can, instead of like risking Yan taking another fight and losing that, or Weili taking another fight and losing that. Moving on. Sugar Sean O'Malley. He did it. I can't believe. I still, like, looking at this picture right now of him holding the belt, I still feel surreal. Like, I can't imagine how he's feeling, because this is insane just to look at, that he has the belt of all people. He did it. I mean, good for him, you know? Good for him. And I like a lot of, even if I'm not the biggest Sean O'Malley fan, he has really entertaining fights. He's got an exciting fighting style. He's all right on the mic, and he brings in a lot of hype and excitement. You know, now whenever there's a bantamweight title fight, it's not just gonna be like a guy that's mildly popular, and then like all the UFC hardcores who know that bantamweight is a crazy division going, oh my god, it's a bantamweight title fight. Now you're gonna have tons of people all over. You're going to see posts everywhere about Sean O'Malley and the bantamweight title fight that's coming up. And you know what? I'm all here for that. Bantamweight's my favorite division by far. I do not mind having a lot more excitement and eyes on it, you know? Even if O'Malley's got to be the guy to bring it, I'm down with that, you know? It's cool. I like bantamweight, and I like the popularity. O'Malley and Vera both won on Saturday. This is, if you guys noticed when I did my Munoz matchup and I didn't include Cheeto, that's because he's back here with O'Malley. I think this is the fight to make. They've both been calling for it in December. They both look like they took virtually no damage in that fight, so a December turnaround shouldn't be bad for either one. And this is just the fight to make. It's just so obvious. As much as I don't really like it, just because, like, meritocracy standpoint, it makes no sense. Like, Cheeto doesn't deserve this fight. It's just a great fight. I mean, and Cheeto's not that undeserving either. Like, he got absolutely schooled by Corey Sandhagen. But if it weren't for that, Cheeto would be a perfectly viable title contender, having knockouts on Cruz and Edgar. This win over Munoz, like, and there was another fight before that he won, you know. I think he beat Song Yadong, even. Like, part of his win streak right now. Well, not win streak, but you know what I mean. So, I mean, it's not that bad when you really think about it. And then you add in the title, the whole storyline of Vera beating O'Malley on the come-up and everything. He starts to become a much more deserving contender. And when you think about what the build-up is going to be for this fight, it's going to be so much fun. They're going to be throwing barbs and jabs at each other over Twitter and over press conferences and interviews all the time. It's going to be like 2-3 months of just both of them yapping on social media. It's going to be fun. And I think it'd actually be a great fight, too, especially in a 5-round championship sense. Like, I really would wonder, because Vera always looks like he's made out of leather. And I really wonder if O'Malley could find that chin of him. And Vera is a bit of a KO merchant himself. And I don't trust O'Malley's chin near as much as I trust Vera's. So I'd be curious. It's kind of like the movement of O'Malley versus just the pure tankiness of Vera. You know? It's a really good matchup. The more I think about this fight, the more I'm on board. The more I like the idea. At first, I was definitely like, oh, no, not for the sport. What about Sandhagen? What about Marab? But now I'm kind of like, yeah, no, this will be fun. And now my last matchup that I have is, I didn't change the names, crap. Well, it's O'Malley versus Sterling 2. Now, this is my matchup for Sterling. He's going to be out for a minute, dealing with this loss, thinking about moving up to featherweight potentially, and just kind of evaluating a lot of things. Plus, he got knocked out, so there's that suspension that's going to be there anyways. While O'Malley and Vera are making their quick turnaround into December, and Sterling's busy recovering. While Sterling's busy recovering, sorry, I said that weird. While Sterling's busy recovering, O'Malley and Vera can have their quick turnaround in December. Then then O'Malley's gonna need another little break after that, and by the time that break's over, I feel like Sterling will have like finished fully recovering mentally, physically, all the good stuff. And I don't think he's gonna move up to featherweight. I think he should, but I don't think he will. So the next best bet for him is just to go for an immediate rematch with O'Malley. I mean, I can't be the only one who was getting a little annoyed by how much they kept trying to call Sterling the bantamweight GOAT in the lead up to this fight. I'm sorry. They only did that to glaze O'Malley better when he won and beat the bantamweight GOAT. Sterling's not the bantamweight GOAT. He could be number 2 above TJ now, possibly, but Cruz is still number 1 for longevity and stuff for me. I know caliber of competition wasn't the same, but Sterling didn't exactly have the best performances against that caliber of competition either. So it kind of 50-50s out for me. I still put Cruz higher than Sterling, personally. But if O'Malley plays his cards right, he could 100% become the new bantamweight GOAT. And that's kind of part of why I'd say this matchup. Because Sterling should be able to get an immediate rematch. On paper, there's no reason he shouldn't get it, right? He just needs to have this time to recover from the knockout and whatnot. So while he's doing that, O'Malley, Vera do their thing. Then they come back. And this would be the next best matchup for O'Malley outside of the Cheeto Vera. Because you start looking at all the actual, like, real deserving contenders, like Merab, Cejudo if he wins a fight, possibly, Sandhagen. Those are all, like, pretty hard matchups for him. Outside of maybe Sandhagen, who's a little more stylistically favorable, Merab and Cejudo are still nightmare matchups the same way Sterling was. So if you want to keep him away from them as long as possible, you give him the Vera fight in December. Sterling recovers. You give him the immediate rematch because he was the bantamweight GOAT, quote unquote. And then after that, then you are left with dealing with the shit pile of Cejudo, Merab, Sandhagen. Maybe one of them has knocked the other one out and they're out of contention, you know? By that point, you'd assume during that time you probably get like Merab and Cejudo to fight each other. One of them loses. One of them's out of the title contention. So then you have to fight one of those two. And it kind of, after this fight, it really becomes a tricky minefield for O'Malley in his title reign because he's going to have to start taking on bad matchups. But I think if you want to protect O'Malley as long as possible and kind of get the best matchups you can, this would be the next best fight to take for him after the Vera rematch. And, I don't see why Sterling wouldn't want it. I can think of reasons why Sterling shouldn't want it, but I don't think he's going to think like that because I think Sterling's bantamweight legacy is so good right now that if he moved up to featherweight and had like a good run and even possibly captured the title, I'm not going to knock it out for Sterling completely. He could still win the featherweight title, I feel like. But I don't think he has as good of a chances as I used to, but I think he still could do it potentially. Or at the very least just go up to featherweight and beat a couple of real good names like Ortega, Holloway, or Allen, Yair. I mean, I think he's got a good shot against a few of those guys. And that, just further cement his legacy. You might, if he loses to O'Malley a second time, his bantamweight legacy I feel like is kind of like in the shitter. But if he just leaves it how it is and moves up to featherweight, he could have a decent just like overall like status as a like top 20 GOAT maybe, But there's my matchups, guys, at my UFC 292 post-fight matchups. Let me know what you guys thought. I think these are all pretty exciting matchups to see after that main card fight. A couple of them are like a little predictable. I think a couple of them are a little out there though. So let me know what you guys think. And I'll be back again with another video, hopefully not too long from now. Later, boys.